Welcome back to another Grill Bots podcast. And today I'm here with
Matthew,
Miroslav, and Aiden.
So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the cost of FTC and the cost of robotics. So the average FTC team spends thousands of dollars annually, and it has a giant inequality gap, obviously. And so how fair is it that one team has way more money than another team? And how fair is it that we have to fundraise for our own? Like, should there be a minimum a budget that
You mean a maximum?
FTC a minimum budget that
minimum.
FTC sends to everyone and a maximum budget, or should it be like the teams can kind of make their own fundraising group that is dedicated to fundraising? So how should it be?
Well, minimum. There's no way.
Because where would they get that money from?
Where are they getting that money from?
I mean, can an FTC get some sponsors, some really big sponsors?
They already do have sponsors, but sending out like the minimum. Like, they would have to at least send out, like, maybe $1,000, maybe $500.
I think it should be the team's responsibility
It's expensive.
to find their sponsors.
Yeah, because there's like over 20,000 teams.
So even $1 to every team would be $20,000.
There's no way they're going to get that
They're not
much
getting
money
that much.
just
They're
in
gonna
sponsorships.
Yeah.
That is true.
And each robot, like, it costs like $500 to $1,000. Some are even upwards of like $7,000.
If you could get it, obviously the best to get a minimum budget. But how would we do that though? Is there a way that it's feasible? Is it
I
possible?
wouldn't say so.
What about a maximum though?
A maximum should in my opinion, that should definitely be put in, because if you look at really popular teams like Hyperion, they have tens of sponsors, and some really unknown team would have maybe one sponsor that gives a really low amount of money, right? So like each robot, it's gonna be, even if you get the best possible robot you can make for $1,000, like even a mid-range robot that they can make for, I don't know, $5,000 would be way better, right? So there's that thing. It's getting less about robotics and more about money at that point, right?
Well, like the thing is, it's like you said, there's like an unknown team that might have one sponsor that might give them, I don't know, $500, which wouldn't build that great of a robot. And you have Hyperion, who then has 10 sponsors and gets a few $1,000s that build top of the line robot.
Yeah.
I feel like FTC should look into that. Like each team should prove like their sponsorships and how much they get, and then see like if they can cut the 20,000 teams down to 10,000 who maybe don't have like a good amount of money. Maybe they can send like $500 to those teams so they even out. Like they won't send money to the.
It
teams
is
with
less
a
money.
lot of money.
500
But
times 10,000
still
is
a lot.
$5 million. It's really hard to get
Yeah,
$5
million,
dollars.
yeah.
They're not going to get that just from sponsorships.
Yeah. What company out there is going to give $5
Without
million
being
just for
profitable.
like robotics kits?
Yes, it's
It
about
is $5 million.
like FTC is about education. It would be nice. Maybe some people could apply for grants, I guess. But like grants from FTC, I guess that could be feasible. Like they only give out a certain number of grants. But to 10,000 teams, that's not happening.
Yeah. So that's kind of minimum budget. It's not really feasible. So let's talk more about maximum budget. How much you guys think it should be, and how should it be set? Like, how should the maximum budget be set?
Well, you definitely have to define it, because you could put the maximum at like how much can the robot cost, or you can put the maximum about like how much the team. But like there are a bunch of different because the robot costs, but there's also like prototyping. The amount of parts you have, you can do more prototypes. You can do more types of things with it, right?
You're right. Yeah.
And you can buy like, if you have more money, you can buy like really good machinery as well.
And good 3D printers.
Yeah, that are just high quality prints.
I would say it really depends on the team, because let's say at MTI, for an example, there was a lot of teams from the U.S. that the team members, they just had to drive there. It didn't cost that much. But then there's also some teams that flew in from say Romania or something, and they have to pay for plane tickets. So that's going to be a lot of money. So they should obviously have more funding
That's the difference.
than other teams who would just have to drive down there.
But should transportation be paid by the student, or should it be a team thing at that point?
Well,
Both, because
Yeah.
like maybe like the whole team should look how much it costs. Maybe plan out some like cheaper ways. And
split
then,
it out. The team
yeah,
can pay for some.
split it out for like this kid has to bring in this amount of money, and like if everybody brings in amount of this money, we can travel there.
But that also kind of compromises their budget for their robot, right? So that also brings us to like the thing of, if a robot is more expensive, it's just going to be better. And transportation costs, facility costs, all that is managed by your budget, and it's really hard to have a good robot without a good amount of money. Like if you it might even be not feasible to buy something like an odometry pod, and you have to use one from years back. That's gonna make it so even no matter how good you are at robotics, no matter how good the team is, you're not gonna get as good of a robot as a team with $10,000 would.
I would say it would be fair to put a limit on the amount you can spend on materials for building the robot itself.
I feel like the whole maybe $4,000 for the overall team. Maybe they could put in $3,000 for their robot and leave
Well, there's also prototyping. That's another.
Yeah,
thing,
leave
like,
$1,000.
The amount of parts you get.
You have $3,000, to build your final robot, and you're left over with $1,000 for maybe
Prototyping.
Prototyping, maybe upgrading your booth area, getting better machinery, and even if you don't if you only use $3,500 from that year, you could save the other $500 and maybe rack up $2,000 to buy something else.
Also, you're a builder. So, in your opinion, you're beginning. Well, you're freshman builder. So, who knows how much you know? But what do you think? Purely your finished robot, all the parts added together, the price of them. What do you think that maximum should be? In your opinion.
Well, I would have to compare with the
That's
good
fair.
teams and the bad teams.
You have
What's
to
the
figure
middle
it out.
price range? But for our robot,
It's a hard one, yeah.
all right. So in my opinion, I think a robot should cost probably $2,500 because our robot came out to $2,000 because that was our budget. But I feel like we could have bought some more parts with the $500 if that was our
Yeah, I see what
bigger
you mean.
budget to buy some new parts because we did spend a lot on one camera, which was $800, the Limelight. So
And with 2,500, you can definitely make a really good robot, but it also puts a cap on just paying kind of to win. It evolves a lot of skill, and some of the best teams, even though the robots are really expensive, their robots just in general are really good. But definitely, maybe even 3,000, just a cap, so it doesn't make it too much pay to win because of some people can only afford to maybe get I don't know, a $1,500 robot or something.
Here's the thing,
It's obviously
though.
going to be worse.
Here's the thing, though. Even if he set a $3,000 cap, I doubt that most teams are gonna be able to reach that cap. I think they're gonna only peak at 1,000 or 1,500.
No, but it's mostly for the best teams in the world. Yes, majority aren't going to reach that cap, but it's for those top teams in the world where their robots are really expensive.
But then that brings a question in mind. The top teams have that money because they are top teams, which lead them to have more fun rate, more
That's true.
sponsors,
They just have
right?
good ideas.
Yeah.
And good,
So what I'm saying is they have more sponsors, right? If you set the cap to 3,000, what do their sponsors do? The sponsors
Well,
that
they can
gives
use the
them
money
more-
for other things.
that gives them a challenge. How good of a robot can we build with $3,000?
Yeah.
We're cutting down $4,000 if their budget is $7,000. Because with $7,000 you could just replace all the parts you had from last year. You don't even have to reuse any. But $3,000 just gives them a new challenge.
Makes sense.
And then it proves to their sponsors, because if they can make it to Worlds again, it proves to their sponsors that they're sponsoring a good team. Because even with a $4,000 budget cut, they're still doing as well as they did with $7,000.
Yeah, it makes sense. So it's kind of a thing.
And with
on-
that extra money, they could use it for other things too. I think.
what?
We're just talking about the main cost of the robot, what the robot costs, the whole robot.
So
Nothing else. They could use it to travel, to other competitions.
Makes sense.
But also just for new machinery, of course, new parts.
But then that's also kind of the same thing. If you use it for new machine and new parts, that means their budget is still $7,000. When we say $3,000, are we saying that's for everything?
Yeah, that's
Or-
for everything.
It's just
new
for the-
parts,
no.
new parts as well.
Well, I was thinking when you bring in your robot to the competition, how much does that robot cost? How much does that robot cost if you added up all the parts on it? That's just what I'm
That's
thinking.
what you think. That's what the maximum should be. How much a robot
You'd
costs?
be surprised how much.
I think that $3,000.
It might be a bit high. You're
It
right.
like if we take out really basic things like facility, water, snacks, just like in general, like shirts maybe. If you take out all that stuff, the raw budget for programming, building, and outreach
There's nothing.
should just be $3,000. Like the raw budget for those things should be $3,000. That's my
Yeah,
idea.
because like if they have $4,000,
I can see.
they're not gonna spend on snacks and water.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
true.
understand if you get a $3,000 budget. If it's just saying it's on the robot, then that doesn't really change much because they still have that $4,000 that they can do a ton with. They can.
They can try to do machinery.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, that's huge.
not like. Maybe other teams don't have that type of machinery, but will come out with the same product. Maybe it'll just make it easier for them, but that will give them an advantage on the robot.
It's just you can't really track that stuff.
Yes,
You can track the actual, well, kind of. It might
like,
be
what if they
difficult,
implemented a rule where you have to have you have like the notebook, and in the notebook you have the list of all the parts on the robot and
That's
all
what
the
I'm saying.
costs.
Just the robot.
Yeah, so like
Yeah.
what you kind of did, you went through the robot CAD, you listed all the parts were on it, you found
The price.
the prices of each, how much we bought of each. You then figured out the total cost of the robot.
yeah.
Each team could do that and then include it in their notebook. So then when judges review the notebook, they could review
Make
their
sure.
entire part list and maybe see the robot to see if stuff adds up. And
Yeah.
I think in that case, the budget instead of being, I think in that case the budget instead of being $3,000 should be lowered a bit. Like it should be more close to $2,500.
Just for the cost of the robot.
Yeah, if it's the robot.
And then, like, with the
3,000
extra
is still a
money,
ton.
you could just do a bunch of other extra stuff.
Like
Snacks.
Just to get
Spend $3,000 on snacks.
Would they buy like filet mignon to snack on?
I'd eat that during a robotic
Yeah.
meeting.
Who would?
Robotics meeting.
Just to get back to the point you made on machinery, one thing we could do is we could also implement a limit on how much teams can spend on machinery. Because if there's a team that has a lot of really good machinery they can use and another team doesn't, the team that does will be able to get their parts made
Yeah.
a lot quicker than the team that doesn't.
So basically budgeting pretty much everything but
Yeah.
separately.
Yeah.
It's just it's hard to track that stuff. Like
It is.
It's hard to implement. Like, yes, you can morally say you can't do this, but like, you're just not gonna be able to really track these things. Like, yes, some teams are gonna have like a Bamboo Lab 3D printer, which is like really expensive, and then other teams will have a less quality 3D printer. But at the end of the day, there is always gonna be some inequality. It's just how can we make that a little bit less? Right?
Yeah.
That is true. Like how easy is it to really enforce those new laws? Like we're saying it super easily. Oh yeah, only a budget and stuff. But in reality, teams aren't really gonna. It's hard to track everything. Even writing down parts, it's kind of hard to track that as well because they could lie on that as well. If a robot has some specific things
The
on
really
the inside
competitive
of it,
teams.
yeah, if it has something on the inside of it that can't really be seen, just lie about that. It's really hard to track everything,
I think just in general. Yeah.
I feel like budget of the robot would be easier to track than the
Definitely.
machinery.
I feel like
Because
that's
you don't have to,
feasible.
visit
Or
every place
it's
that-
like you could just have a list of the things printed out, and then the people can kind of check generally, maybe.
Yeah, like big things, like
Mhm.
your wheels, your side plates, slides, maybe other stuff.
Because you also know how this is like
Motors.
a comparison, but like, you know how at Walmart you have to give them the receipt, and then they check a couple items and stuff. It could be something like that during the robot inspection.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Just like they have the list, and then they look through a couple things, and then they just
maybe look for like
it'd be a little more specific.
like very expensive items on the list. Locate those maybe even if they're small. But
Yeah.
if you have like a touch sensor that's like way in the robot, that doesn't really matter
Yeah,
that much as like a limelight camera.
yeah. So I don't know, but an interesting thing to talk about. So yeah. Good podcast today, guys. Interesting discussion. Yeah. All right. See you next time then.